Hello, I'm Sandy, this is Amy, and we are both from Fat Pebble. We're going to be talking about how we try to stand out making handmade games. And I think first thing we're just going to show a quick kind of show reel that gives you an idea of what we do.
Is that on the next one? Well done.
Okay, so Fat Pebble was a studio founded by Mike, Ian and Chris, so you might have noticed none of the people in that trailer was actually us. We only started there sort of this year. So it was started by Mike about 3 years ago on his own. He made a few games, and then he was joined by Ian and Chris. They are all veterans of the industry, working in places like BlackRock, Zoe Mode, and Lionhead. We're based in Brighton, UK, which we found out over the past couple of days is quite a long way away from Stafford, so it took quite a while to come up here. And yeah, we're now 20 staff and counting. We've also got a kind of friendly crew of freelancers that come in on a regular basis. Our focus at the moment is on mobile and tablet platforms, and we'll talk a little bit later about why we think our games are such a good fit for those platforms. Okay, so working at Fat Pebble is a pretty fantastic place. It's got a very strong company culture. I mean, I've been around for about 8 years now in the industry, and I've never really found anywhere like Fat Pebble. They're very keen on making sort of lovely, family-friendly games, getting people really excited, getting kids interactive with the like actually making stuff as well, and inspiring them to create their own things. And this was like just last week. Someone came in and they'd made a load of Fat Pebble themed cakes, which were delicious. So we actually have a few different schemes to make sure that Fat Pebble is a friendly and creative place. So we've got an ideas box, which is basically a communal folder where anyone can put any idea for any game, and it all gets assessed when we're looking for a new project. So anyone can have an input, a creative input, and it doesn't have to be like a design document. It can be a picture that's inspired them. It can be a video. It can be some music, whatever it is. And then when we're looking for a new project, we'll all talk about that. And if your sort of idea gets chosen, you're given an option on whether or not you want to work on that project.
Ready?
Wait a minute. Go back.
Oh, God.
So we're very keen on sort of making sure that everyone appreciates what everyone else does at the company as well. And we've got a lot of handmade assets going on, so that's always nice that you see people's desks and what they're working on. But we also do skill sharing days where we had...
Game jam.
Yeah, the skill sharing day was basically the artist showed us how to model a character and what would be good to work on in a game. And then how to photograph it using green screens, then how to cut it out using Photoshop, how to put it into a sprite sheet in Unity, then the programmers sort of took us through writing simple scripts for it. So we all kind of knew what everyone was doing, and you could ask questions along the way. We also do a game jam. We've only done one so far. We've got another one coming up, which was basically downloading tools for 2 days and working in little teams to create our own little game prototypes. We got a fun budget, yeah. We got a fun budget that we do every month, where it's basically we go out and do something interesting. It can be cocktail making course. It could be like outdoor games in the park. We did a pool tournament. So it's a nice little family. We try to make sure that everyone gets on with each other. Like Mikey and Chris have spent a lot of time when they were building up. Like, it can be that if you build up quickly, you lose that company culture, but they understand just how important that is. So this talk today is primarily about why we are handmade, why we make the sort of games we do, how we got to this point, what the actual process of that is. So it's pretty different from making a traditional 3D asset heavy game. What the design challenges that are involved in that are, and also why we think it's a good idea for us to stay handmade.
Okay, so just think it's interesting to introduce ourselves, because one of the things that makes us different as a company is that we're not necessarily from traditional games backgrounds. We've got model makers and animators, as well as your traditional like coders and designers. So my previous work experience is involved in like illustration for Topman, Papercraft for Google, State of Play as well, which was my first games experience, which is also a handmade company, working on Lumino City. And my specialism is making handmade models and doing the stop motion animation side of it. So I don't really touch much of the tech at all, if I can avoid it. So why did we go with handmade? Well, partly we think it's a sort of familiar and relatable thing. I mean, I think everyone probably has played with some kind of plasticine or Play-Doh in their youth, so it's got that kind of like nostalgic feel, which I think encourages everyone to get involved, really. It helps us to stand out, it makes us a little bit unique, and hopefully it inspires creativity, and we do get people sending in things that they've made based on our previous games, so yeah. So the first and, well, our main title published so far is Clay Jam. That was an entirely plasticine game. And part of the reason, as Sandie said earlier, that we stick to mobile and tablets is because it's got that tactile feel. So with Clay Jam, you carve a groove in the clay with your finger, and it's reflected as if it would be in actual clay. So it keeps that kind of tactile handmade feel that we want to keep for our games. Crack on. So before they started making it, now me and Sandie weren't here at this point, but they tried out making the engine rendered 3D, the Maya rendered, and the final one, which is what they settled on, is the photograph sprite. And I think you can just see in that, that's got that more, you can see the fingerprints and it looks more like clay. So to get that more convincing feel, that was what they stuck with at the end. And this, to show you how it goes, how it's sort of built up, they're all flat images on the 3D planes. So it has to all be done from a certain angle, or it would kind of, you'd be looking behind that 2D plane, it would ruin the illusion. And this is where Clay Jam was made. So this was Chris's garage, and all the animation and model making was just done in this little setting here, which I think, you know, if you're looking at a startup, it's nice to see what you can achieve with that kind of space. So it's quite a unique way of working. Carry on. Mm-hmm. But we have grown. So this is our new studio now. It's got a little bit bigger, and it's bigger than that, and we're looking to move again soon because we've grown so quickly. I am knitting in the corner there, which you don't get in a game studio very often. Carry on. And this is our new dedicated animation studio. So we've got our workbenches here. I should also say it is not that tidy anymore. That must have been when it was first put together. And they've had those special space, so we can have two animators working side by side in there. Okay. And this is mine and our other animator and model maker's desks. So again, just to show you, it's a messy business, really, which is fun. And these are some examples of the models, the kind of things that we can make. So we can't talk about our new project, but and these aren't from it, I should clarify, but we're using different techniques now. So like this totem pole was carved out of wood with little clay eyes. The feather duster was felt and a skewer. The basket was raffia and matchsticks, and that is party onion from clay jam, which was obviously clay. So yeah, we can do anything, and it's a kind of just find whatever works, really. So our lighting and photography. We use Philip Hue lights. I don't know if anyone's used those, but you can get your settings and activate it through an app or on your laptop, so it changes it. And it's important for us to kind of get the angles and the lighting locked down right away, because if you change it, obviously it's inconsistent. So yeah, that's important for us. This is just to sort of show the contrast between what some stop motion and rigging is like in ours. So it can be really complicated, and if you're doing it for a feature film, you need it to last a long time, and it's got these really intricate sort of systems in it. But we don't necessarily need that, because what we do is this sort of thing. So his little arms will just have wire in. He only needs to last a sort of a certain amount of animation. And some of our animations might only be 5 frames, depending on what we're doing. And this is our little sprite. So that's all the angles that we would need to take to have that moving character convincingly. And like, he's a little bit clunky, but we like that. You know, if we're going to make handmade games, we want them to look handmade. So that's him running. And photogrammetry is something we've started to use as well, which is all a bit technical seeming. So you take a load of pictures of your item, and it's generated in 3D software, and it gives you an actual 3D model that you can move around. There's more on this, so keep going. So that's just an example of some of the angles we take. I mean, you take as many as you possibly can, really, because you want to get it from all the sides so it can merge together properly. Sandie. So that's the mesh made up in the software, and it puts that texture on top of it. And you can see on our next slide the level of texture you get. So, you know, it's really convincingly clay, I think. And you can do this sort of thing with 3D scanning, but it gives it a uniform lighting, whereas we want to keep those shadows and that same lighting consistent. So that's why we use that. But this is just to show you the kind of issues that can happen with that. If you've got a dark area, or if it's very fine, it won't necessarily pick up that detail. You need to have enough information for the software to piece it together properly. So yeah, it's flawed, but we're kind of playing with it and seeing how it goes, really. And this is just to show like some of the effects. So Chris is dropping confetti there, and he's taken some speedy little pictures of it, put it together in Unity, and it gives us, ooh, glittery. So yeah, just the kind of like different techniques we use, I suppose, to get our end goal. We really try and keep everything as handmade as we can. What's next? And now Sandie's going to talk.
Okay. So yeah, my name's Lockie. I'm senior designer there. Just a quick sort of run through of who I am and what I do. So I've worked at all sorts of companies. I started out at EA down in Guildford, and I was there for a year before redundancies, and then ended up having to move to Liverpool for 3 years, where I worked at Bizarre Creations, which is fantastic. But then also studio shut down, so moved back down to Oxford and worked at Exient, and then preloaded in London, and finally found myself at Fat Pebble. So it's been a kind of nice, fun journey here. And the way I got into the industry was I was actually doing a contemporary and creative writing course at Derby University. And it got to my 3rd year, and we had to do a dissertation that involved interviewing someone. And like, my original idea was to do it on newspapers and the decline of the broadsheet media and the rise of the Berliner format. And I got like halfway through this thing, I was like, this is so dull. This is not what I want to do with my life. So I kind of just talked to my dissertation tutor and said, can I just do it on computer games instead? And he was like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. So I started doing it on whether or not computer games are a valid medium for storytelling. So if you consider that like the main character can be controlled by a sort of 12-year-old kid or something, how do you tell a compelling story? And the idea was that I went to go and interview Peter Molyneux, which I was really excited about. But the week before I was meant to interview him, they got bought by Microsoft, so we had to go over to America and start schmoozing with Microsoft execs, which basically left me with about 2 months to write a dissertation and no interview to base it on. So I started reaching out to everyone, and EA got back to me, and they were super cool. They had me in to their Chertsey office for a day. They kind of wheeled out design directors, producers, script writers, everyone that I could ever want to talk to. Gave me food, which was good when you're a student. And then at the end of the day, they kind of took me to this big filing cabinet and lifted it up, and it was just full of games. And they said, take what you want, it's fine. So again, as a student, that was fantastic, sort of coming out of this EA building with arms full of games. But it does make it tricky to write a dissertation when you've just gotten about 30 different EA games. And then when I finished my dissertation, I sent it off to them, to the people that I'd talked to, and they ended up getting me in for a role as a graduate development manager, which was a bit strange. It was quite a fun interview process where we were just playing with Lego. And I was a graduate development manager for about a month and a half, but I just kind of piped up in design meetings a lot. And in the end, they said, do you just want to be a designer? And I was like, yeah, sorry. I thought that would take like years to get into, but yeah. I think if you got your foot in a door somewhere, it's a lot easier to move within that company and to move sideways if you can prove that you're proficient with it. So even if a job doesn't necessarily seem like the ideal one when you first go for it, like if you got your foot in the door, then you've got a chance to show them like every day what you can do. The downside of that is we had, I've known animators that really wanted to be designers, but they were such good animators that you didn't want to lose them. So like be good at your job, but not too good if you want to move jobs. So what exactly does design do? I mean, this is one of those questions that you always get asked in pubs when you say that you're a games designer. It's like, oh, so you make the games. It's like, well, I'm not a programmer. I don't really do that side of things. But I mean, a designer's job is basically to communicate. So to communicate what the game is to the player and what they can do in the game world, but also to communicate amongst the team what the game is and to sort of work out any issues amongst the team. I'm not sure if anyone's seen The Door Problem, which was a short article written by Liz England, who's a designer at Insomniac. And she basically explains what a designer does through the medium of a door. So it's a kind of big, long list, starting with, does your game have doors? If they have doors, how do you open the doors? Is it a button press? Do you need keys? Are there locked doors? How do you communicate their locked doors? And it's a whole long list of things. It's kind of a fascinating read that even the simplest thing in a game can have thousands of knock-on effects. So you've got to, every time something comes up, you've got to sort of try and figure out how it fits into the wider game. It's not just like your own little section that you happen to be working on. Designers have to wear lots of hats at various different stages of the project. So at the beginning, it's very much kind of like, what could this game be like? How can we make it? And then it kind of progresses onto, okay, so we know what it is, how do we communicate that? And then it becomes a case of, okay, so things change in the process, so how does that ripple on to all the rest of the game? And also, yeah, so it's not really a black and white sort of thing. There's very rarely wrong or right in design. It's just a matter of context and kind of personal preference. So you need to be able to, when people come with ideas, you need to sort of be able to put your own preferences aside and sort of weigh up whether or not that's better or like how it will fit into the rest of the game. Okay, I thought I had these slides the other way. So design advantages of making a game. This is working at Fat Pebble. Like a lot of trying to communicate of what a game is can come through the actual art style. So with clay jam, because it's all made out of clay, and the actual control scheme is you're gouging a groove with clay, it's a very kind of natural feeling. Especially when you've got a touchscreen. So like you're actually touching the clay and it's responding exactly how you'd imagine. So I mean, that's one of the biggest advantages from making handmade games is that people have got a basis in the real world of how this thing should act. I mean, arts and crafts and sort of making fun things is associated with play inherently. Like it takes people back to being a kid and to making stuff on their kitchen table and stuff. But it also sets a lot of boundaries. So there's a lot of things that we can't do. And when you're doing design and you're kind of trying to figure out all the puzzles, actually having those hard rules and those boundaries as to what would be the best sort of game can give you a lot of direction straight off the bat. You can spend a lot of time sort of going in all different ways. So when you have some strict rules at the start, it can actually help out quite a lot. The design challenges of making handmade games. So everything's a sprite. That we use at the moment. We are looking into photogrammetry at the moment, but as you saw, it's not perfect. And using sprites, it's got some bonuses, like you get the really nice kind of handmade, intricate details, but it can be a real pain as well. So like, if you're halfway into a project and you realize that, this character should have a hat or something, it's not as simple as, in 3D you could just, put a hat on it and it's fine, all the animations still work. Whereas in this you'd have to remodel the character, reshoot everything, cut it out again, put it back into the game, and it's a long process. So you kind of have to do a lot of it right first time. Same goes for the baked lighting. So you can't rotate around a character unless it's actually modeled into the end, unless you've actually got those pictures. You can't sort of just create those extra assets because the lighting will look all off. And yeah, unchangeable assets. So once you got them, it is a real fight to change them. So yeah, why will Stay Handmade? Even though there's got all those challenges, it does really help us stand out. So not just on the App Store, like when you see a screenshot of it, it catches your eye, but also with publishers. And also, yeah, we found that people responded really well to it. It's been critically admired, but that also spilled out into people wanting to show it to their friends and family.
Oh, sorry. I do apologise.
This is one of our favourite things is the inspired fans. So because we've gone to great lengths to make sure that everything looks handmade, it is slightly clunky, but it looks attainable. It looks like something that people can do themselves. And so we got some amazing things. There's an Instagram group that kind of spends all their time making stuff from clay jam. That top left one is actually a birthday cake that someone made, which sadly didn't get sent to the office, but it looks amazing. We would have eaten that.
Should we
Yeah.
do that or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is kind of what we love about handmade games. It really is instantly charming and familiar for the players. It really fits on touchscreen devices because you feel like you're kind of reaching into the game and interacting with it. And it's kind of universal. We want to make games that everyone enjoys and everyone feels inspired by, and that's kind of a Fat Pebble ethos. So handmade really fits in with that. And so,
Yeah,
yep.
and that is that. But we've got 5 minutes if there are any questions or if you want to chat to us at all. That looks like a no.
Okay. Well, if everyone's,
Okay.
yeah, if anyone has got any questions, yeah.
Just one thing to one. I'm quite interested in the technology of that photogrammetry you mentioned. I'm very impressed with this experiment. What kind of software package?
Agisoft 3D. Yeah, we use for that. But yeah, it's been pretty effective. It's quite amazing when you've got your little handmade item and you can rotate it around. It feels like quite an amazing thing.
I mean, the tricky thing with that, again, is that once you got it, animating it is a different kettle of fish because you can have a 3D image that's static and looks great, but as soon as you start moving it, clay kind of moves in a very, it kind of crumples up in a very unique way. So, it's good for some things. It's an extra string in a bow, but it's not going to solve everything, I don't think.
Yeah, we've got a PhD student with us at the moment, and she's kind of looking more into that sort of technology. So hopefully over the next few years we'll see some developments.
And it's been around for a while, but it's not really used in games very much. So we're kind of trying to pioneer how we can use it and twist it to our whim.
Brave claim.
Yes.
We'll see.
But we'll be around. So if anyone's got any questions, just give us a... Yeah?
Yeah. Depends how it goes, really, because there is quite a lot of trial and error there. And working with a publisher, you kind of have to stick to your time limits. Yeah. So, but we're pretty good, I think.
Yeah, we build some contingency in because, it's not. Again, it's that whole you got to get it right first time. So it's not like you can just make minor tweaks to something to sort of change something a tiny bit. Some things you can, but sometimes it's just quicker to start again from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine on some of our shorter animations, but yeah, the more lengthy ones, you kind of need to get them right first time.
So what we're doing a lot more now is, and it makes a lot of sense, is just doing a lot more white boxing and prototyping and making sure that we know exactly what we want to make before we start making it. I mean, it's that whole measure twice, cut once thing. But yeah, so the idea is we get the game pretty much fully playable before we even start on the art assets.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks to Amy and Sandie there.